Hello, this is Kent Mulgad at Kelowna Now, joined by Doug Gilchrist, our city manager. So good of you to come in for these. We so much appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me. I love talking to the community through your voice.
All right, fantastic. So we've got a bunch of stuff to get through here, starting with a lot of people I'm sure have seen it in the headlines, that we have re-criminalized the use of hard drugs in public spaces, including hospitals and places where people might gather in parks. I know you're not a cop, but how does the city expect to absorb this change? How are you seeing? What are you hearing about how it'll make things different?
Well, I think it's a positive step in the right direction. This is something our council has been advocating for heavily. Our mayor particularly has been very vocal on this issue and had conversations with the minister and the solicitor general, trying to push for restrictions on public consumption because of the impact it has on the greater community. Particularly his advocacy was around parks and public spaces, as you might recall. This goes a step further than that, and I think it's a real positive one. And it's important that when something isn't going as planned, that all levels of government step back and take a look at the reasons why and make whatever change is necessary.
I do think that people might need to temper their expectations, because I do understand that, these sorts of issues are very much within the realm of discretion for an individual RCMP member. This doesn't mean anyone seen doing drugs in a public place is going to be rounded up this minute and necessarily punished under these laws.
Yeah, again, I won't speak as an expert in public safety or an expert in criminal law by any stretch, but the application of any law has a certain level of practicality to it. But nonetheless, this is a big step forward, I think, to acknowledge that some individual accountability is necessary in this area, and that the implications to the broader population from open drug use in public spaces just wasn't working. It wasn't acceptable. And more importantly, I think it wasn't achieving the outcomes that the decriminalization was intended to do in the first place.
Right.
I want to save people's lives. And we've seen that go, sadly, in the other direction.
Right. So thumbs up pretty much from yourself.
From the city perspective, certainly with our RCMP as our partners and contractors in public safety, there's active conversations going on how this will be applied on the street on a day-to-day basis, and hopefully communicating that clearly to our citizens so they know what to expect.
Well, do you feel that the RCMP feels, okay, great, now we've got another tool on the tool belt here, or is it an added burden that they need to enforce this? Do they like it or not?
Well, I haven't had any deep discussions with our superintendent yet on this. It's really brand new. We knew it was coming, but wasn't really authorized by the federal government until yesterday. So some deeper discussions with them on the application of this. But really, I wouldn't say it's any new tools. It's giving them the tools back that they used to possess to intervene with people. And sometimes that intervention is in the public interest, but it's also in the individual's interest, because it gives them an opportunity to say, hey, do you know there's a service you can go to help work through your issues, or some support groups or society that individual can be connected with. And that is part of the solution.
Right. Okay. I want to move on to the subject of what I would call transitional housing, and you might call emergency housing.
Sure.
We're talking about like the tiny homes and that modular housing.
Yep.
That is designed for people who are experiencing homelessness to get some kind of shelter. Just bring us up to date, first of all, on Step Place, and secondly, the modular housing on Highway 97 trail side.
So Step Place, the one that is adjacent to our current outdoor sheltering location, or our largest outdoor sheltering location, has gone, I would say, better than expected. It's gone extremely, extremely well. I think it's been well received by the residents that are in there, the operator. BC Housing has kind of seen the light a little bit, I think, on how these can operate, at least in the early days. And the business owners seem to be giving us some pretty positive indications that they're happy with how it's going. If you walk by and look through the gates of that location, it's clean, it's organized, it's quiet. So I'd say it's a raving success. And again, kudos to our council. They put this on their agenda as a priority. They pushed for the model. The mayor particularly was a big advocate. He and I actually saw this model at FCM last year and kind of ran with it. And here we are today with maybe something that's going to be replicated more and more throughout the province as a result.
And you're saying even the businesses nearby that were quite vocally opposed are making believers out of them?
I think so. I think so. This is we've heard from a number of them directly that they like what they see. Clearly, they want to see OS4, the outdoor sheltering site that isn't Step Place, the one that's on the rail trail, shrink or eliminated or relocated. Unquestionably, they still want to see that. But the actual Step Place project, they seem quite happy with.
Right. So yeah, shifting to the trailside location, where's that project at?
Occupancy, I believe, this month. Some of the finer details of the project are being done now. Most of the indoor components of the trailers that have been put in place are finished. Obviously, the aesthetics are still being worked on, and that's fine. It's kind of the last piece of the puzzle. I'm confident that the aesthetics will be dramatically improved with what we've asked for. That block wall and a few things like that were challenged in the
People
community.
have been kind of, dissing the way it looks a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most architecturally pleasing thing that you would like to see on that corner. We know full well that coming into our city, we want nice looking buildings, and this isn't the best, but it's also temporary, and it's also addressing an emergency need. We don't have a plethora of available land we can put these types of uses, but once it's complete, the aesthetics will be much better.
I don't think I'm buying that temporary thing. I don't see, when you look at or the history of how many people are experiencing homelessness,
Yeah.
It might be a long temporary.
Yeah, when I mean temporary, it's 5+ years, but it's not permanent.
Yeah.
That's the vision. And those are the terms
I'm
of our
envisioning
agreements.
a renewal after 5 years, but
maybe something more permanent there,
right.
or in an alternate location. I mean, we're always going to need some level of housing that has supports in it, outreach services and different things like that. I don't think we're ever going to get away from that. They've always been there to some degree.
Yeah.
It's in a different form. It's more acute. And there's a larger number as a result of that opioid crisis, for sure.
Right. And we were hearing that in particular, this housing will be for seniors. Is
that's correct.
The case? And the other mystery right now is that there was a commitment to do 3 of these. So there's another 60-unit facility going in somewhere. You don't even know where yet, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it's a secret. It's that we haven't landed on a location yet. It's like I've said, we don't have large tracts of land where these types of facilities can go. So we're kind of with a discerning eye looking at, what's the right distribution throughout the city, what services are necessary around it, like people need to get on a bus or
right.
what have you, depending on the population that it serves, like seniors. There's certain things that should be around one of those facilities. So we're hoping to land that very soon and hold the province accountable to getting that 3rd location so we can get up to 180 units, get people off the street, get them the services and supports they need, and do so ideally before winter.
Wherever you put it, though, you have to look around and know, okay, who's going to put us on blast after we put this here? Because there's probably none of the choices you're looking at are going to be fully embraced by everybody nearby.
Agreed. However, I think some of these test pilots, like Step Place, have gone extremely well. So we can alleviate the fear maybe of some people if one does go in and around their neighborhoods a little bit. The proof's in the pudding that it's working.
Yeah. I spoke to one of the individuals who has been staying at Step Place. He didn't want to go in front of a video camera, but he was just telling me how much better he felt about himself, having a place like that to live. And he was really pleased with the whole community that's formed inside, that people are good to each other. They like the people managing it. And I was practically saying, come on, there must be something bad about this place. No, he had glowing praise for it. And you're hearing back the same kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to hear. We know that, some of the things that ail the folks that are on the street won't be solved without treatment, recovery, and housing. So Step Place for them is maybe a start on a better journey.
Right. Seems everybody agrees there should be more treatment. But,
Unquestionably. I don't think that's really much of a debate any longer. We need to get it funded. We need to get it in place.
Yeah. There was some interesting points raised at this week's city council meeting. In this ongoing effort, we have this province-wide push to get more housing built, right? We've got to add to the supply. With the price of a house and the price of a condo astronomically high, we've got to work on the supply. but then it's like it backfires. Everything you do has this negative impact. So in the past, it's been, okay, we'll take these 2 older homes and we'll knock those down and put in a 25-unit apartment building.
Sure.
Okay, so we lost a couple of houses that had low rent. Oops, but we're getting all this housing built. And now we're seeing projects coming forward where you're knocking down a whole apartment building. And now the number of people losing their lower rent housing grows. And it's a really troubling prospect. You've got dozens and dozens of people saying, where can I live now?
Yeah, I mean that's the downside as we get aging infrastructure. There are many buildings in Kelowna that were built in the 60s and 70s that are coming to the end of their functional life, and they need significant investment for them to continue to be habitable. They had those obviously come with lower rents, and then people getting displaced when they get rebuilt. But higher density certainly allows for greater efficiency and more available housing for the masses. But many of those buildings will come to the end of their life. So they're going to be invested in one way or another with heavy retrofits or being torn down for new investment.
Right. So this issue got raised around the council chambers, and I think you were quick to point out there really isn't a policy on this. The city doesn't have a framework to turn to in terms of relief for people that find themselves adversely affected by, say, an apartment building knocked down.
Yeah, so there's a few pieces of legislation provincially, like Residential Tenancy Act, which includes notice and compensation for someone that gets displaced. We have a mobile home park redevelopment policy of council for mobile home parks, and there's also the Mobile Home Park Act that also applies to mobile home park redevelopment and displacement of people of sometimes low income. So those are the kind of the extent of the policy and legislation that exists today. That's not to say there wouldn't be something further in the future for low income or low cost residential condos or something to that effect. But we have to be mindful, if we're going down that policy path, of the implications of putting an added burden or cost on the development, because it only increases the price of the ultimate housing that gets built there. So you may say, if you displace somebody, then you have to relocate them. You have to compensate them. You have to give them a first right of refusal and then on a condo in that project or something like that. All of those things would likely have some level of implication to the cost of building that project that gets passed on to the buyer or the renter.
Right. It's amazing how many of these efforts, to increase the supply come with this backfire element where, even people who have homes that are near transportation corridors are finding their assessments have gone up because there's redevelopment value. Yep. So this overall plan to increase supply, to bring down the price, ends up increasing the price on the microcosm.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because otherwise people would think it's simple.
Yeah,
it's not simple. It's a complex, nuanced process to put the right kind of housing in the right place at the right price. So that everybody can have a place to call home in BC. Right. So it's complicated, and that's why it hasn't been solved yet. So I think the important thing for me and our planning groups is to keep trying new avenues and new ideas and be innovative and course correct if it doesn't work.
It almost seems like the best you can hope for is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and try to avoid 1 step forward, 2 steps back on the subject of.
Yeah, there are going to be implications for sure. I'd like to think that in Kelowna, we're on the cutting edge or the forefront of some of those new ideas and have been for quite some time. You think of legal suites in houses. We did that a long time ago. Infill, carriage houses, 4 units on a single family lot of sensitive infill. We did that idea like 6 years ago. It's now provincial legislation. So I think we're doing most of the right things when it comes to the housing and trying to be innovative and sensitive to the topics you're talking about, like displacement.
Right. Okay, here's a hot topic you might not even want to talk about, but this UBC project downtown kind of turned into a bit of a nightmare. So it does look like an engineering failure. We've got all the buildings around it are have huge cracks appearing. We've got people out of their homes for who knows how long. But I think a lot of people think, the city has an engineering department. They all approved this. But really, it's the developer that provides the stamp of approval on the engineering?
Yeah, so like any piece of infrastructure that comes in that's part of a development, whether that's a sewer, a water utility, a roadway design, excavation, hillside slopes, different things like that, we don't engineer that as a city. We don't even re-engineer what gets submitted. What gets submitted, it comes in as an engineered stamped drawing. We have professional reliance on that industry and the industry standards and the engineers that are certified. We then just confirm that that work has been done in accordance with the standards. So no, we don't engineer it. We don't re-engineer things that get submitted. We rely on that engineering standard.
Right.
In this case, I will say, and in other circumstances where there's a very significant initiative or one that may be precarious, like really steep hillside retention or something like that, we do require peer reviews. And in this case, we did have both the geotechnical engineering. The geotechnical engineering was peer reviewed at our request, and we have peer review reports on it.
Right.
So those are the steps that we take to ensure compliance. Geotechnical engineering is in part art as it is science, and we have a really challenging water table and material in that part of our city. It's incredibly unfortunate. We're doing everything we can, I think, now to help ensure it gets back on track, working with the partners, and also a huge focus on the people that are impacted. It's one thing to impact infrastructure, but when people are impacted, that's when we really need to step up and do the right thing.
You mentioned there's reliance on the engineers of the proponent of the project, but does this shake that reliance? Might we see even more of this requirement of additional peer reviews? I mean, this we really got kind of burned here.
Well, sure. I mean, I think all the developers are taking note of building below grade and how far down they can go reliably in Kelowna now. We may see some different building techniques in the future, or people moving back up to above grade parking, which we know also has aesthetic challenges where you build these big plinths or podiums that the parking has to go behind. But we probably will see some repercussions from this one.
And then in the background, there's some sort of a lawsuit brewing, and I see the city named as a defendant in that. So good times ahead. Okay, maybe in brighter news, we're going to get some electric buses.
Yes.
Are you looking forward to that?
Absolutely. I think council has a priority of climate and environment improvements, and that has a multi-pronged approach to do better and do more and protecting the environment. And one of those things is an EV strategy we have for our city fleet, but also extends into EV infrastructure for private vehicles where we can, and also electric buses. So our partnership with BC Transit includes electrification in the fleet long-term. And there's a couple of big initiatives associated with that. First, and smaller initiative is to electrify the Hardy Yards where the current bus location is, so that we can charge there. For the interim, while we hopefully secure the funding federally and provincially for a major new transit garage that is fully electrified fleet.
So the plan is to, at some point, have nothing but electric buses.
Fully electric fleet is the current plan.
This industry seems to have faltered a bit. There was a lot of issues arising from some buses in Edmonton, so that's kind of changed BC Transit's strategy a bit on which supplier.
Yeah. So the supplier that was previously going to be used for some of their electrification expansion is no longer. So my understanding is they've secured a new supplier that shouldn't hold things up too dramatically, and we could see some electric buses starting here in Kelowna, I believe, later this year.
Wow. So summertime, fall?
No, I can't give you an exact date. I think the first would arrive towards the end of this year, and then migrate more into the current yard site next year. And then once we get the funding for the new transit garage, start migrating to a fully electrified fleet when that comes online.
Just over time, seeing the electric buses start to outnumber their counterparts.
Yeah, I think it'll be welcomed by everybody. Quieter, smoother ride, less maintenance, and obviously great for the environment.
Terrific. Anything else you want to bring up? This airtime is free to you.
No, that's a great conversation. Hopefully your audience got a little bit more information on those topics than they had before.
Yeah, we always do. Thanks so much for coming in.
Right on.
Doug Gilchrist, our city manager, and thank you for watching Kelowna Now.